Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Sorry, we're in the car. Dropping Eastside at home, and then I'm gonna join now, just because that way, once you start, I'll already be in the room.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How did the move-in go?
It went good. It went pretty well. There was they had everything staged, so it was all in like phase movement. So you had a certain hour time frame to move everything in, and so that other folks can move in, so there wouldn't be too much crowding, and it worked out really well. So once we figured out how to get our the trailer close enough to the sidewalk, because it was because where we had to park, 'cause we brought a trailer, that everything worked out really well.
That's good. Good to, and I'm sure he's excited.
Yeah, totally forgot. Okay, so I forgot what else you asked. The question about what you asked?
Lazarus, you were talking about.
Yes, thank you. So have you all noticed the statue for Saint Lazarus? You'll see them in botanicas, you'll see them in probably see them online. But there's an article that I read by Catherine Hedgedorn, who wrote one of the best books on Lukumi, rhythm and dance, I think, that have ever been written. And I've had her book for a long, long time. Really excellent book. I believe she passed away many years ago, though, because I've had the book for over a decade, like at least 15 years. And she wrote an article about the processional that happens in Cuba. It's a really good article. And she argues that Saint Lazarus is an actual Cuban saint. And I think she extends her argument to say that if it weren't out for Baba Luaye, there would be no Saint Lazarus. And because she says there's no Catholic iconography or no Catholic equivalent within the order of saints that you can find Saint Lazarus. I remember when I read that, it blew my mind. So she's saying that is a saint of Cuba and not of any other place. But Saint Lazarus has crutches. If you look at his statues, you'll see him draped in purple. You'll see, which, Baba Luaye's colors were established clearly before, within Arara and all of those, and in Dahomey and in Yoruba land, and the colors that were established for him were for different roads. My Baba Luaye's colors are not purple, they're black, but the purple that we associate with Baba Luaye is in the saint's clothes. He's portrayed as a haggard man on crutches with a dog. And the Osun we have different Osuns, right? We talked about the class about Osun. The Osun for Baba Luaye has a dog on it. So I think that the Arara and Lukumi influenced the Catholic tradition. That's what I think. There's too many coincidences. There has to be. I'm going to ask one of my teachers to do a class on nothing but Baba Luaye in terms of all of the things that all these questions I have. I'm going to ask him to do a class on that. Anyway, so the crutches on the altar, some people do have crutches on their altars. And even in the Osun that I have for my Baba Luaye has crutches. So, and some people keep crutches at their altars for Baba Loaye as a symbol of that time when he was down on his luck, and going through, literally dragging himself from town to town. So, and then also, and even in the dance for Baba Loaye, if you notice, there's a part of the dance where he's his head's down and his shoulders are moving, but then at one point his head goes back, and the dance gets more energetic and whatnot. That's also symbolic of that journey that he took. So the dance for Baba Loaye recounts that journey that he took to reclaim a kingdom in Arara. So I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I did or didn't. So I'm going off. I don't even know if I asked the question. Okay. So you were talking a little bit about the Pataki with Oshun and Baba Loaye, and how so there's some interesting things in that to me. So when I think about that, about that Pataki, and I've read a little bit about this too, that Baba Loaye, Oshun actually was the reason why he got in trouble in the first place. But then she saved him. Oh, my telephone Oshun. So so there was this whole thing about Oshun's being the youngest and the smallest, but also being powerful enough to persuade Iku and persuade Baba Loaye, persuade Olodumare to spare Baba Loaye. But that is another Pataki where I think the whole question of how his inability to practice moderation, or practice to say, okay, this is great, but I can't do it every day. And so that whole thing. And so oftentimes when Baba Loaye warns someone, it's like, you have to be careful about your habits. You have to be careful about your lack of discernment, because if you're not careful about that, that can reap larger consequences than what you're willing to pay. And who wants to pay the price of death? Baba Loaye didn't want to pay the price of death, so he literally wasn't careful and paid a price he would never have chosen to pay. And so it's interesting that connection was made, I think, with Elegba also working with Oshun to trick Olodumare.
And even I guess like with moderation, I've kind of felt that way with Oludamare, like because he just needed it and was even willing to trade Iku just for that, because he was out of balance. And now it makes me think of the mirror. And so it's kind of like his own moderation was flipped to even the moderation that Baba Loaye wasn't able to stay within, in turn saved his life, because it flipped on Oludamare to ward off Iku. So I was like, hold on.
Interesting observation. That's an interesting observation, because he was so infatuated with something that he could not create. He didn't know how it was created. He didn't know, and he's a container of all possibilities, but he encountered a possibility he was prepared to give death up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So it's interesting. Okay. So that's interesting that you brought that up, that actually reflected back on Olodumare in light of the thing that he was punishing Babalola for.
Yes, he said it way better than I did. I was trying to get there.
I see your point.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I have to drive because I have an appointment, but and I I unmuted myself to say something. So two things. Also with the thing of moderation, I think that that's a very like I don't know what the saying is, but kind of like a warning tale for us in society today, because we definitely need moderation in every aspect of our lives. I mean, the environment, our the internet, with so much like we're on our phone, like at least me, and constantly on our phones. So I feel like we definitely, as a human race, we really need to apply that, because if not, we're definitely not only going to see it in our individual lives, but overall in the earth, the world, will definitely pay if we don't apply moderation to our lives. So I whenever I think of Babaluaye, I'm think of that and how it's kind of like a warning, right, of what may come if we don't start applying that. And I also had a question. I know I feel like I've seen cactus as an offering for him, like the they're called nopales in Spanish.
Yeah, they're very good.
And also, they're delicious. I love nopales. And also like the corn. So I'm wondering if there's a correlation to. I know you spoke of the Cuban, the Cuban connection with the saint and all that. I'm wondering also if there's a correlation with like native like a native essence as well. When I mean that was like the first thing that I saw as an offering, the cactus. I don't know. It made me think of that. Or is it more like him being connected? Is he connected to the desert? I was just a little intrigued by the cactus and the corn.
That is so interesting. I have not seen Ebo to Babaluaye in the form of cactus. Because is cactus even native? Are there native cacti to Yoruba land?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Yeah, because you've been to West Africa. You definitely would, and so have you, Isai.
Yeah, I have. Sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, okay. Rosalind, you would say no to?
Yeah, just because of the climate and the landscape, I wouldn't think so. Not cactus as we know it.
Right. I don't know where you saw that as offering, because when we do the Agban, we definitely do not use nopales. Corn, we use popcorn. We use popped corn because of and that's significant. So that was an adaptation. And that's significant to Babaluaye because it is literally, representing like like every kernel is like this, like a skin cell that explodes with disease, so it's like literally like representing like disease. Popcorn represents disease. That's why with some homes that have Babaluaye, certain things can't hit the floor. Like certain things in the house really should never be on the floor because that may represent some warning of some kind. So you have to be careful with certain things. unless you're in ritual with it in a certain way. So corn was an adaptation because of because when you heat it up, it pops like almost like a body that is diseased, that disease spreads. So the popcorn is symbolic of that eruption of something, and you're cleaning yourself with it. So you're literally kind of cleaning yourself to remove that possibility or remove the connection of that. So it's like you're taking the thing that represents the disease and using it to ward it off. So that's why popcorn is used. But now cactus, I'm not aware of cactus being an
evoker. I believe I saw it in Baba Asson's shrine. That was like one of the first things I noticed. And I believe when I asked him, I believe he said that was Baba Guaye's shrine, but I don't, you know, I'm not, I believe that that's what he said. And then, yeah, also the popcorn, because in native, in Nawa rituals, we also use popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a lot of correlation with the corn that I saw with like native, like native rituals. So I don't know. I was just wondering if there was like but yeah, it would make sense that certain things from this continent are applied. So
yeah, like the sunflower is Oshun's flower, but it's not ever been in Africa. But it's pretty, it's yellow, and she likes it, you know. So there's that. But it's definitely, you know, stuff like that is adapted. But you'd never see, if you see sunflowers on a mat in a ritual in Europe, in a Lukumi ritual, you need to run out the door, because it's not a ritual. It's not ritual, but it's pretty on an altar, right? So, but as an offering, but not as a tool, right? There's a difference between making an offering, you know, because you want to make an offering, and even though they do represent things, but if you're giving something that's supposed to be used as a tool. So when I hear you talk about cactus on an altar, I have to say I'm a little concerned that may have been a misrepresentation. I've been initiated to the mystery of Baba Luaye for how many years? I don't know. I'm not going to say the right number of years, because I don't remember when I received the initiation. But I can tell you, in all of my years of being in the rituals of Baba Luaye and working with people who work on the continent as well as in Brazil, I've worked with different folks in Brazil with this Orisha, and I can tell you unequivocally that I've never seen cactus used in any ritual of anyone who has bona fide certified credentials to know that Orisha.
Yeah. Oh no, it was like an offering. It wasn't used in a ritual. It was like it was like part of, you know, it was like you said, like the sunflower. It was like that. It was like they didn't use it in a ritual or anything like that. It was just like the food offering. It was part of I think it was like right next to the corn. But I never thought of to ask like what the significance. I just noticed it because
I've never seen cactus as an and it probably it was probably symbolic because of the popping of this, because the skin on the cactus has stuff coming out of it. So it's probably why they decided to do that. That's probably why. Probably because of the skin of the cactus has eruptions in it. And those eruptions have things that come out that can hurt you. So it's probably an extension of that idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you.
With my limited knowledge of it, that's what I'm thinking. But good questions, really good questions. Thank you for asking.
Oh yeah, I had a question about the popcorn. Is the reason why it's unsalted, is it because of the batala?
That's a good question. I think it's unsalted when we use it, and I never even thought about the fact we don't salt it because we're just going to clean with it.
Oh, okay. Because that's okay.
Yeah, but that's a good question. No, you're making the connections, but it's really just because it's really just used for cleaning. So we're not gonna. We don't need it to taste any kind of way. We just need it to be used for literally to clean us of whatever is potentially harming us. Yeah. Yep. Anybody from the silent majority have any questions?
I kind of had a good evening, family and everyone. Sorry, I'm actually I'm at home now, but I'm still on my phone. I didn't want to try to let me see if I can turn my camera on. Hold on. There we go. So it's not really a question. I mean, I was thinking of it as a question earlier and I forgot what I was going to ask specifically, but I was just thinking about listening to the Pataki and just thinking about how, because of kind of thinking about the unity of opposites, how disease and famine, these things are equally as important, as health and prosperity. And it's kind of, I should say, I don't have a question per se, but that's something that made the Patakis made me think of that. Just and I, and also just kind of wondering how it's sort of seen, is our pandemics disease, are they also seen as like cleansing, similar to like a controlled burn in in like a prairie or something, right? That you have to bring things down and break them back down or destroy them in order to rebuild them. So I was just kind of reflecting on that. I know you didn't necessarily say it that way, but that's something that I was taking it in that way.
I appreciate that question a whole lot. And I've been reflecting on that question a lot. I know I've talked to other priests and other folks, and we've been reflecting on this question a lot of how, because we have to believe that this served some purpose for us, right? Even though it has been absolutely devastating. And I've experienced loss personally through this. And so, it's the type of sacrifice we never want anyone to have to make, right? It's the price that we don't, for our lack of moderation, that we don't want to have to pay, right? But there has been some potential reordering of things, and I've seen glimpses of it. And I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts about this too. I think I've seen some potential glimpses at reordering things. There's been more talk of equity than ever before because in thinking about Oluwaye and his connection to disparity, right? He is really very well connected to how we experience how his experiences with despair brought him to the point where Legba Shango literally came, lifted him, and Shango, there's a whole thing with Shango and Babaloye that's a very important and actually very critical and important relationship, that literally Shango literally lifts Babaloye on his shoulders to make him king. But that only happens after he reached a certain depth of despair. And that was, to the point where his collapse meant the world's collapse, meant the disease was rampant, right? So when we put things back together, so that exposed, that despair that we've experienced has exposed so much more that was wrong that people weren't willing to even talk about before, let alone acknowledge before about our world, right? And so it's unearthed so many things that we would otherwise have had no reason to pay attention to. So I have to wonder how those two things function together, Andreas. I have to wonder that. I have to wonder whether we had to experience so much pain and so much sacrifice. Have we ever prayed as much as we prayed? Have we ever prayed as much as we've prayed in this last year and a half? Have we ever wondered what sense of community meant as much as we have in the last year and a half? Have we ever wondered how much our lives are worth, how our elders need to be protected, how our long-term care facilities need to be regulated and held to higher standards than what they have been? Have we ever asked those questions as a society as much as we would have had we not gone through this? I have to ask, right? We have to wonder. And so I don't want to ever say thank you to disease, but you know, we always say there's a proverb, without the good, we don't know the bad. Without the bad, we don't know the good, right? You know, same thing as I talked about Olodumare being, we don't believe that there's a God and then there's a hell. We believe that there is God, and God has dominion over everything. So that means all the things we experience that are both good and bad are all under that auspice. Which is why when we consult our Ori, we can know that it's going to tell us about all of it and not just the stuff we want to hear, but the stuff we have to know. And so if this isn't that call to action, to what we need to see, what we need to hear, what we need to know about the least of us, and that's who Babaloye protects. He protects the least of us, right? That's why I mentioned giving alms, because when that procession happens in Cuba, when they're in El Rincon, where there's thousands upon thousands of people who are, you know, literally some are literally dragging themselves on the floor for that pilgrimage. And there are some people who, when they go through their initiation process, have to actually beg on the street. Who work with Babaloye, they have to go through the process of asking for alms. And you never know if the person that you're passing over for alms is somebody who's going through initiation. They may be literally going through initiation. That is actually true. Right, Isai, it's possible. So there's this whole connection with him and the humility that he forces his children to go through and to experience in order to gain the crown of Babaloye. So it gets deep. And so some people literally are told to give alms because of their relationship with Babaloye, because they can never overlook someone who may be sacred to Babaloye who's asking for something. And when you work with his energy enough, you'll feel the connection with certain people. You'll feel it. I cannot explain it. I cannot, but since I've been initiated to his mysteries, I cannot explain it. But there are certain people, when they're begging on the street, it's like I know that's somebody that's working, that he's working with, that he's protecting. So I have to give them something, even if I think they're going to drink with the money. No judgment, no judgment. I've learned over the years, my Fede from Babaloye, my Fede from Olekba too. No judgment. I'm not here to judge that you're going to take my money and do what I need you to do with it so that I can feel good I gave it to you. It ain't even about that. That might be his child. And I might be I may be connecting with Babaloye by giving somebody something. So Babaloye is deep. And so that question you asked, Dreas, to me connects to those questions about how we treat the least among us in society, how we feel connected to everyone, and how the person who may be literally sitting with their hands. There's this one person in particular, I see his face in my mind right now. I would see him, he would have his cardboard underneath his lean, and he would be in this position with his hands just like this, and he would be rocking back and forth. That's all he would do. And he would have a big, tall, white cup, about this tall, sitting right in front of him. He would just be rocking like this back and forth, not saying anything, just rocking back and forth and shaking his head. And something about that energy of him and his posture, his connection to what he was at. It was like, I can't pass him without my Doya. So there is something to that. There is something to that in terms of humility, and there is something to that in terms of how we understand this, how we all need to be humbled by all of this. And thinking about moderation and the mask wearing and how people are fighting it, and people who, I hate to say this, but there are people who have been saying this is not real, who've been dying. I mean, there have been several reports of some of those conservatives who were, saying this is a hoax and those folks died of COVID, just seriously. So, we're learning. So if we don't learn, what is the next lesson going to look like? You know what I'm saying? What is the next lesson going to have to share with us and teach us? So to me, there's a lot embedded in that question of how we understand Babaloi in connection to our inner alignment, and how we understand his role in helping us to really understand the importance of disease as teacher, and that we're all in school, especially when we get older. I know my godson knows like I do. When you get in your 50s, and my goddaughter Roz too, when we get in your 50s, boy, your body starts telling you things that you just like, what? Really? We doing this now? And that's humility, right? Disease is teaching us in those moments. And that's why, as we work older and over time, we work with Babaloi, there's certain things sometimes we may have to do to help him, to help us to understand and be in balance with whatever our body is giving us knowledge about, so that we can have a response that's proper and evolve to our thinking and our understanding. So gets really interesting. So I know we're over our time, but I want to give you all a chance to ask questions still, a few more questions if you have any. And I haven't heard from Miss Amber yet. How are you, love?
I'm doing okay.
That's
I'm-
good.
It's the second week of school, so it's exhausted, but the kids are back.
Yay.
Yeah.
A question mark or yay, yay? Yay, period.
It's just insane. That's all I have to say. It's just busy. I don't really have any questions. I've just been really listening and taking in tonight.
Okay, good. Good to see your face.
It's good to see everybody.
Mhm. There he is. All right. So I'm glad you all, glad everyone had something to contribute tonight. That's what makes this really wonderful and rich, is when we all give ourselves space to ask and speak on things. Yes, Isai.
I have a very deep question. So
He
I was
starts with
wondering.
preparing. He prepares us before we are. So we are ready.
Yeah.
Everybody ready?
So I was wondering if so you for the Pataki where Oshun saved or helped resurrect Bablue. I was wondering if Bablue kind of changed after the resurrection.
That is an interesting question. Did he learn his lesson? And by most accounts, yes and no. Because it's interesting because Pataki are not their stories, yes. Stories have beginning, a middle, and an end, right? The same as Pataki. Same as the stances when you read what's called Essay Ifa or Eshe Ifa, where you have the first part that talks about who the diviners are. You have the story of the protagonist who came to the diviners, and then you have the resolution of what happened, whether the person made sacrifice or not, and how that person or animal or entity's life turns out, right? Sometimes it's ants, sometimes it's birds, sometimes it's it's a woman, sometimes it's an Orisha, sometimes it's an Odu, right? So all these things have a sequence to them. But I think with also in terms of how we look at the Orisha and how they emerge from the Pataki in terms of their lives, we don't see there. So sometimes the postscript is that yes, they did come back and they did learn from that and they practiced moderation and they did do the thing that they should have done in the first place. That oftentimes is how things end with the stories, and that's what happened with this story. So Babaluaye did come back. He did learn this lesson. He was thankful to have another opportunity to live and to learn and to take the lessons from that, from what he learned, and apply them so that we don't have to make those same mistakes, right? So yes, but there's so many versions of these lessons, right? So I gave what 2 or 3 that talked about one thing that Babaluaye did wrong that had consequences on various levels in relation to very big ticket issues, right? Poverty, death, disease, right? And so can we say that they're all different stories because they were all different points of Babaluaye's life? Or can we say that there are so many instances where we've learned that, where we've understood that Babaluaye had to learn and relearn the lessons that Babaluaye had to in order for us to have the knowledge to do and experience better things? I don't know. I don't know the answer. So, but I do know in this case that yes, there was a reformation. He was reformed. But there are other Pataki that talk about him doing and having equal equal appetite, very equally overzealous appetite. So it's interesting, right? Learn the
And yeah, and was it? I guess I was asking like, was he kind of like reborn, or
to
or
be
was he the same
B as in
person?
boy, Reborn. Oh, that
Yeah,
question. I see you know your godmother went all on a tangent about something else, but I would say that's a good question. The concept of rebirth in relationship to an energy. That is an interesting question. I don't know if I have the answer to that. The cosmologically, because to me that's a cosmological question. And so some ways you can say yes. In some ways you can say yes, because he did come, he was brought back to life. So in that sense, by nature of the act itself, he was reborn. But was he the same? Was he the same energy? And I'd say the answer could be yes. There are different roles of Babaluaye that are all connected to Pataki. Different roles that deal with different aspects of Babaluaye, just like they have different aspects of Alegba, right? I talked about that. My role of Babaluaye is the reaper, the one that collects the bodies. So it's a very it's one of the older roads of Babaluaye. So who knows? So in one sense, okay, I'm gonna relate it to another story. I'm gonna try not to take too long because it's already 6:42, but I have to relate it to the story. Do y'all remember the story I told of Shango and Obatala when Obatala went to jail? And Obatala went in to jail and came out as another road of his Orisha, Oyigi Yigi, which is one of the oldest roads that when it mounts, he's blind, he's crippled, he can barely walk, he cannot stand straight because he was in jail for so long that he is the road that was born out of being in jail so long that he literally lost his sight, lost his ability to stand, lost his vitality. And he is also very considered in lost his years in life because he was so much older, right? So he's a very revered and respected road of Obatala, and I've seen that road mountain. It's like the whole energy around that road is really, really something to be around, honestly. Not too many roads I've seen, but I've seen it mount twice, two different people who I know who mount that road. So that would be in way answer to your question, Isai, that it is possible for an Orisha to have for a road to be born of an Orisha through an experience that Orisha has that transforms that Orisha, which means that which adds to its story, it adds to its experience, adds to its presence, adds to its potency and breadth, right? So I don't know what road, if any, that Babaluaye was born into when he came back, but likely that could have been the case. And in that sense, that would be the equivalent of being reborn. Does that make sense? You guys are nodding too slow for me. When people nod slow, they're like, sure.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, but that's a good question, though. That was actually a deep question.
I have another question, but I don't want to take up people's time.
I appreciate you asking. So for those who want to, who need to leave, appreciate it. But we'll entertain this question, especially since I turned off the recording. I forgot to turn the recording back on. So give it some more time.
Okay, so I was wondering, what was my question? Oh, I was wondering, like, so when you get initiated, do you get a certain, like, when you get your, not your head marking, but the second Orisha kind of?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that specific road of that Orisha?
Mm-hmm.
And also the one on your head?
It depends on
Or
if your
no?
Orisha has roads. Yes. So if for Orishas who have roads, yes. For those Orishas that do not have any roads, no. So a child of Shango is just a child of Shango. For example, there are no roads for Shango. In Lukumi, practice of Oya does not have roads. In Brazil, she does. In Lukumi, she does not have roads. To answer your question. That was straightforward.
Yeah.
All right. Very good questions. Thank you. It's a very good conversation again. I always appreciate that about this class. I'm glad we went ahead and did this tonight. I'm really glad. And you all keep in mind in your heart the person that's going through the process of transforming their lives tonight with Babaluaye, which is why I want to do this class in honor of that person's transformation.
Is it in Chicago?
It's in Miami.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. You too, Dress.
Bye, everyone.
All righty.
Have a good
Night,
night,
everyone.
everyone, and a good
Great
weekend.
weekend.
Have a good night.
Bye.